जस्तो लाग्यो मलाई। ओके, नमस्कार। ओम संगच्छध्वं संवदध्वं शंभो मनंसि जानतां देवा भागं यथा पूर्वे संजनाना उपासते। भाग्योदयेन बहुजन्म समर्जितेन सत्संगमं च लभते पुरुषो यदा वै अज्ञान हेतु कृतमोह मदान्धकार नासं विदाय हि यतोदयते विवेक. We are very fortunate that we having first satsang through the International Federation of Sanatana Dharma. So first of all, I would like to welcome everyone who are participating in this satsang. So this is our first satsang. Etat satsange sarvesham sahavaginiam swagatam vyaharaami namaskaromi cha. Etat prathama satsange vayam. Does our education system affect the Sanatana Dharma? Iti visaye labdha yasa Sri Amitabh Satyam Pramukha Vakta Rupena Swavicharan Prastutam Karishyasi. Etat. So, because we are the very first satsanga we are starting, so that's why today's, because every satsang is our tradition, we need to some leading person or the leading person. So to lead this satsang, I would like to request Associate Professor Nirmal Mani Adhikari, who is the founding president of the International Federation of Sanatana Dharma, also the theorist, and on his leadership we have several movements to transform our society. So I would like to request Dr. Nirmal Mani Adhikari to have chairmanship of this satsang program.
Namaskar. Dhanyavad.
Similarly, I would like to request Sri Amitabh Satyamji to accept our request guest lecture of this satsang program.
It will be my honor.
Similarly, I would like to request Professor C.P. Singh to join the satsang program. And similarly, I would like to request everyone, every participant to become a part of the satsang program. And not doing delay, I would like to request Professor C.P. Singh to deliver his welcome speech introducing Sri Amitabh Satyam, and also giving short introduction need of the International Federation of Sanatana Dharma. Thank you very much. आप खोलिए, सो म्यूट हैं आप.
Thank you, Dr. Govind Saran Upadhyay for giving me this opportunity of introducing our lead speaker today, Mr. Amitabh Satyamji. On behalf of the International Federation of Sanatana Dharma, including the founding members who are present here, the President, Dr. Nirmal Mani Adhikari, Secretary, Dr. Govind Saran Upadhyay, and many, many others who have connected to this program from across the continents. I'm here, I extend my welcome, warm welcome to Sri Amitabh Satyamji, who has kindly agreed as one of the founding members of the International Federation of Sanatana Dharma to deliver his speech. And at the same time, I have been given the task of introducing him. Before that, I would like to say a few words. Why did we need to have such an organization? That it has already been elaborated. by our founding president, formally as well as informally. I just want to use this opportunity to reiterate that dharma everywhere in the world is under attack. Anything which is duty oriented, that is under attack, and that has been under attack particularly over the last 2,000 years since the emergence or coming into picture of the major religions, particularly Christianity, Islam, and the third is communism, which is simply speaking, philosophically speaking, an extension of Christianity and Islam, that is Marxism. So these three religions are mounting attack on the dharma that is all about duties, and these religions which are focused about primarily rights. And these rights are normally without ethics. These rights are founded on the pillars of loot and pillage, inequality and the might and right. Jiski lathi, uski bhais. So we want somebody to speak to us from the regional perspective, cultural perspective, global perspective, technological perspective, to be precise, from multidisciplinary approach. And Mr. Amitabh Satyam fits into this very well, and we are honored to have him as one of our founding members. And Dr. Nirmal Mani Adhikari, who is our founding president, he made this choice that Mr. Amitabh Satyam should be requested to deliver this speech. And Mr. Amitabh Satyam gave us the topic, the connection between the modern education that we have and how does it affect adversely or otherwise the Sanatan Dharma. Mr. Amitabh Satyam has got over 3 decades of working with technology-driven companies. He is an IIT graduate who did his MBA from Fisher College of Business in the United States, and has worked with the leading high IT firms, for example, SAP, IBM, Modi Apps, Siemens, Reliance, etc. And he took voluntary retirement to devote himself to academics, to applied research. And he has written a book which is now being taught at the Oxford University and all the IIMs, that is A Smart City Transformations. How our cities are going to be tomorrow and how they are going to address our needs. On the other end, or the other end of the spectrum, he has written a book that addresses the Semitic concept of feminism, or the Western concept of feminism, and that is the end of romance. The romance that we have, that is a dharmic concept largely, that is based on giving, giving, and giving. How feminism is all about taking, taking, and taking. And that the end of romance is a book that each one of us should not only read, but make our spouses read, make our children read. That is a great, great book. And the third book that he has authored is the Hindi medium types, that he talks about the colonial mindset and how that colonial mindset sips into or drips into or percolates our language. So he is someone who fits into all this, the scheme that we already have, that how Sanatan Dharma is under attack in this country, in our neighboring countries, and globally. And he is going to, I'm requesting him on behalf of you all to tell us the nuances, the conceptual nuances, along with wherever possible, the statistical references, that how education system is being impacted by I'm sorry, the power has gone out. So within a few seconds, I will possibly have the required light. It is on now. So I'm requesting on behalf of you all, Sri Amitabh Satyamji, to deliver his maiden speech at this satsang organized by International Federation of the Sanatan Dharma. Amitabh Satyamji, please, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chandrakantji. You have described me a lot more and you made me sound much bigger, but thank you so much. We have been good friends for a very long time and I appreciate. Nirmalji, Govindaji, thank you to all of you for integrating me into this entire process and making me part of it. Can you please, Govindji, allow me to share? I have a presentation, so.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor C.P. Singhji, to deliver his very meaningful welcome speech introducing Amitabh Satyamji. For your kind information, in this satsang, we have a participant from several countries. I see the participant from USA, Dubai, Qatar, Australia, Canada, and as our organization is expanded all over the world, so I again would like to welcome every participant who are eagerly waiting to listen from Amitabh Satyamji. So not doing delay, I would like to request Mr. Sri Amitabh Satyamji to deliver his meaningful deliberation speech on education system. So you know the topic. That's why I would like to just please listen him carefully. Thank you very much. Welcome, Sri Amitabh Satyamji, to deliver your satsang.
Thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, it is here.
Okay, perfect. Very good then. Okay, so as I said before, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be part of this group, and Chandrakantji, you got me into this, and I'm very happy and proud that you integrated me into this. So a little bit about me. I know Chandrakantji presented the business part of me, and I should have given him this input, which I didn't, although he knows it. But I was born in Bhagalpur, which is the Angladesh of yesterday's, and grew up in Sitamarhi, very, very close to Nepal border. I used to walk to Nepal. In fact, I was there last year. We had gone to Nepal for lunch. And then I studied in Patna for 2 years, and then in Kanpur for 5 years, then the US. I was also the president of the Federation of Indian Associations in the US. And as a part of that, we also founded a very large temple, about 15-acre campus in Columbus. And I was part of that setting up of the mandir, and otherwise back in Bharat, I'm a member of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. So, and these are the books that Chandrakantji already talked about. So that's about me. I grew up in a very small village, and then I studied in small towns and big towns, and then the US. So it's like combination of this. So when Chandrakantji asked me to be a part of this organization, I said, my knowledge is very limited in terms of having read the Vedas and Upanishads and being able to quote. And he said, and we both agreed in actually to some extent that, people like me and all of you, we live our culture. We don't quote things like, in Christians, it's not a tradition of every time you say something, you quote a verse, and that kind of justifies what you're saying. In us, we just behave a certain way. That is the one that represents who we are. We don't really quote anything. We just breathe and live the culture which is founded on the Sanatan Dharma. So Anyway, I'm happy to be part of this. So the focus today that I just decided to talk about is, the education system. And I've studied in Bajika medium, and then a little bit, and then actually jumped directly from Bajika to English, but Hindi was always there at the background, everywhere. And so having grown up in a village, and then having seen cities, and now I live in Bangalore, and then earlier in the US, I can see the cultural conflicts and how the modern education system that was institutionalized by the British, but after independence, it has been growing more aggressively. One would imagine that when the British left, we would have thrown out things that was part of their imposition, but we haven't. And we have, so the English speaking, the English medium schools, and the foreign culture has taken stronger roots than they were during or before independence. Then we considered English as foreign language. Now we consider it a part of our life, like we are speaking English here. So that would not have happened before. So I'm just going to talk about, I think I have about half an hour. So I'll talk about some experiences of my own, from my own perspective. I have, as I said, having grown up in a purely an Indian village, which lives Sanatan Dharma. That is the epitome of how Sanatan Dharma is to be lived, which is, like I said, Nepal and Bihar border. So it's an excellent example. And then I'll just try to study the root of the conflict. Most of it is common sense and understood, but I'll write it down. And there's some options to consider how we can fight it and how we can get over it. So this is one line that I like to present to you, that, considering that I work in a corporate world and have been a part of a large organizations, global organizations, people always ask me that, how come, despite having studied at such top places and working in the top companies, you still talk about Hindutva, and I always have been talking about Ram Mandir. To me, it's an expression of oppression. So to me, Ram Mandir has been a big topic. So people always question, why do you do that? Because people think there is a conflict between education and Indian traditions. When you say you are educated, you're supposed to clean yourself of the Indian traditions and become a different person. And this is a huge conflict, because the moment you get educated, you get detached from our culture. Similarly, a profession, if you have a profession, then you cannot put tika, you cannot do anything Indian, or our Bharat. When I say Indian, I mean all of us. Sanatan, you can say, or this region, Bharatavarsha. So when we are in a profession, we address as if we are like British people. We talk like we're British people because we speak English, and we dress like Britishers. And we are in Bangalore, and we are in Sitamarhi, or we could be anywhere, but we still behave as if we are like foreigners. So why our education detaches us from traditions? Our work culture is different from our life culture. Why should that be? Why do we completely change? We at home, we are eating food and we are speaking Maithili to our mother, and then the moment we go to office, we switch to English. Then we find a friend on the way, we speak Hindi in India. So there are these conflicts that we exist that is so unique to our country, not seen anywhere. I've been to 30, 40 countries and lived in so many other places also. No one speaks 2 or 3 languages. Nobody changes language based on where you are. This is very uniquely us. And let's study some more. It's common sense. Everybody knows it. But it always hits me so hard that, why do we have to do that? Why can't I speak my own language in office? What's wrong? And in fact, I did. I'll tell you if there is time left. So being an Aboriginal, that means carrying our traditions and culture, and then educated and professional, successful. They're 2 different images. Our traditional Aboriginal culture, people would be wearing dhoti, sitting on the floor, eating with your hands, eating dal bhat. And educated and professional would be wearing a tie, speaking English, and doing all those British and American things. So that is the conflict, living in the same country or the same region, and you have this kind of a conflict. So I have just a couple of slides. I have highlighted subtle things that we don't realize how this foreign thing has seeped into our culture. So there's a Hindi song called Patjhad Sawan Vasant Bahar, Mausam Char, Mausam Char. So I heard this song in the late 80s when it first came out, and I was in the US at that time. And then it really shocked me that a person of, the writer, he's a very well-known, probably written maximum number of songs, Anand Bakshi. Why does he consider we have only 4 seasons? We have 6 seasons. Everybody knows that. There are 6 seasons in this region, but the song says Mausam Char. Why is that? This is very trivial example. It's very trivial example of people would say, what the hell is wrong with you? But look at it. Why do we think there are 4 seasons in our country? We don't have fall season but the thing is that because we study in the English medium, we are imbibing not only the language, but also their culture and also their geography, their seasons. So since Britain and England have 4 seasons, Indians also believe we have 4 seasons, but we distinctly have 6. So the language and the foreign culture carries the implications of their own culture, and they relate only to those culture. They cannot relate to our culture, and so the emotions and feelings and nuances of a culture, it's very hard. If you are riding on a buffalo and grazing, they're grazing the fields. The language that I would use and I used to use earlier as a child, I have no translation for it. I have zero translation for it. My English has improved over time, but I still cannot speak and represent those things that we do in the villages in English. It's very hard because there is no simple translation for word to word, because it's nothing to do with words. It's to do with the culture and the things we do. Like, I know hundreds of examples like that. So this small thing describes how, just want to check if you're hearing me because I may be disconnected. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, good. I'm just checking for messages in case I lost, because I can only see my slides. So there is another example I remember when I went to visit my cousin. I was in like maybe 10 years old, and he was studying in the English medium school. I took 5-6 hours of walking and taking a train and all that, maybe 10 hours to meet him. And during those days, obviously no phone, etc. And as I entered the campus, and I asked for him, and when he saw me, he ran towards me. And then he pushed me in a corner. He said, I cannot talk because we're not allowed to speak Hindi here. We cannot talk. You go back. I'll see you in summer vacation. And we could not talk. 15-20 hours of my time spent just because he was not allowed to speak our language. He had to speak a foreign language. Otherwise, the father would fine him Sawa Rupiah. So this is insulting. This is purely insulting that in my own country, with my own relative, I cannot speak in my own language. It's because the foreign control continues to be there. This one I'll come back to. There was, when I was at IIT Kanpur, one of the greatest professors there. So I was in my early 20s or late teens, and the nuclear physics course, when he started teaching, he talked about Kanad, that he's the one who first conceptualized Anu and Parmanu, and how the elements are the smaller particles, and till you get to Anu and Parmanu, and that happened like thousands of years ago. And I remember many of my friends would look at each other and smile, thinking, this crazy professor, how can some Indian some thousands of years ago be talking about these things? We are trained to think that Indians was worth nothing. So if someone becomes a nationalist, they are made fun of, because it is understood, and English education has taught you that Indians have not contributed anything. We are like the worst kind of people. And it is all the education, all this knowledge that we have today is because of the West, which is actually also true, because whatever we study in the schools are not Indian education system, or none of the knowledge that has been gained over thousands and thousands of years of all kinds. It is the Western education that they have their own history, they have their own geography, they have their own way of looking at the political landscape. And that's all we learn. We learn their perspective of our life, which considers us extremely inferior. So with that mindset, I, including me, obviously, and many of all my classmates were like joking about that professor. The professor was not very well respected, because he was not that, oh, this professor, this, you know, I mean, if you speak about, like I mentioned a few names, not scientists, but let's say Richard Feynman or somebody, you know, they would be considered, oh wow, you know, the guy is so well read. But if you talk about Kannada and Indian names, then people would laugh at you because, you know, they know that what the hell is wrong with you? Why would some Indian will do that, something like that? The only scientist we knew was Raman, and that is because he had a Western stamp of approval with Nobel Prize. But other than that, we didn't think there was science existed. But now later we discovered that all the science that has been existed in one click has been considered incomplete or incompetent or irrelevant. So our knowledge system has been eliminated from education. The British taught us some curriculum used in England, and which is their science, their philosophy, history, etc. And they have their own interpretation of everything, where it is Aryan theory. I mean, there's a huge politics behind it. Huge politics behind it. Actually, it's more of a religious conversion and superiority behind it. But we have accepted post-independence. We chose that system. We chose that history. We chose all of those things. So I cannot blame them. They were ruling us. They would impose. But if we have to fight back, and when we fought back and we got our independence, we should have eliminated completely this foreign narrative of our culture. We didn't. So therefore, now we have these English mediums in millions coming up now, which is complete. They're standing up against everything against Indian culture. I want to say Indian, please understand, is everywhere. We're talking about everybody here. Bharatavarsha. So these people, and this is, I mean, I keep referring to this political movement because this is what I observe in my neighborhood. And I'm sure I'm very well aware of Nepal, but not much of the other countries. But this active politicking and converting our narrative from and bringing and looking at our own country as if we are some foreigners, see this English medium educated people look at my country as if they have gone to visit Africa, and they're like, oh, I wonder why they do that. Oh, they're going to the temple. Oh, why do they work? You know, they make it look like we are some weird set of people because they have been trained to become and behave and feel like a British or now American. So that happened. So thousands and thousands of years of work in one click completely disappeared. My grandmother, who was so very well known in the community, people would come up to her for advice and everything, was declared illiterate and irrelevant. I know that she didn't have a formal job with the government, otherwise she would have been fired. But the thing is that if people who had knowledge of agriculture, of life and relationships and people and how to manage, she had everything, but she will be absolutely be given no respect in the modern, so-called modern education system, which is very British. So Western curriculum has changed our opinion about ourselves. We ourselves think that we are not worthy. I just mentioned a few names here, just for us to remember that, you know, and we know these things. I'm not saying anything new, but you know, something that I realized, I was in Geneva maybe 7-10 years ago, and I knew that most of this I love watches, and I have many, I end up buying many watches. So in Switzerland, Geneva is the headquarter of all the watches. All the major watches are actually based there and made there. So I thought that I'll get a huge discount, and I went to shops. They were giving 15-20% discounts. I thought, well, after the discount, the watches were cheap. So I thought of buying 7-8 watches. They're all expensive, 300-400 pounds each, but I figured that it will be a good idea for my relatives and myself. The moment I go into the shop and I was looking at these watches, the salesman says, oh, are you looking at Roman numeral or Arabic numeral? Now, the moment he said Arabic numeral, I actually had this huge sense of anger. It just came out. And I didn't even know what to say to the guy. I said, you know, I almost felt like not slapping him, I should say, but there was an aggression and anger inside me that, you know, you take my things and claim that it's somebody else's. I actually felt very angry that they took the Indian numerals, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Egg thing, and then they're telling me that that's an Arab numeral. So same thing that we have observed that, and I didn't buy those watches from that guy. It's not his fault, but I was very angry at that time. I kept telling him, I didn't even want to teach him. I was speechless that how dare you do that? I know that is not his fault. That's what he studied. In fact, that's what we are also studying. We never call it Indian numerals. I don't know what we call, but But all these guys, and each of the names that I have mentioned here, they have contributed so much. Um, and we are discovering day by day that, whether you're looking at quadratic equations, we're looking at all the astronomy cosmology that has existed for thousands of years already. I mean, whatever NASA does today, we have known it for 5,000 years in terms of when there would be a Grahan and all that. So we have known these things. There's an evidence of having known these things. But then the Western world completely dismisses it and imposes its own system on us. And that's why when I say this, I had this instant anger, and I didn't know what to even say, because this anger is a sense of oppression that, you take my things. It's like, I know I'm going to be very open, like that in Banaras, the temple, and then there's a masjid behind. In the Ram temple, they put a masjid on top, and I'm supposed to accept it. Same thing, they take my things and they push their own thing on it, and I'm supposed to accept it. So this anger in me is actually burning many more people, and I'm happy about that. So I'll come to that. People who learn in foreign medium, which is English medium, rank lower. And this is just a long slide, but I'll just be very short. German people learn Germany. I have been to Germany, and I have had and France and all those European countries, I have had a hard time speaking English. In the 80s and 90s, it practically nobody spoke. These days, many people do, because they also study as a second or third language, and they are in the tourist areas. There are some, but nowhere. People, I had a hard time ordering food. I had a hard time ordering water and all that. So, and they have the largest companies in the world. And I mentioned a few names there. Japanese, the same way, they don't have no idea of English or any foreign language. They do everything in Japanese language, everything end to end. They do have some American influence, so that put some signboards, but no one speaks, very few speak English. Same thing, America also, they don't use their foreign language to learn. They use their own language, and they have large companies, global companies. Chinese, I could not even ask to go to metro. The word metro, I thought they would know. They don't even know the word metro. There is a Chinese word for metro. I figured that there's nothing else they would know, but I could not find the direction. Asked 20 people, I remember, I remember even realizing that, look at this country, way more developed than any country in the world, and they don't use the word of English. And in India, in this region, we believe that the progress is, the only way to progress is through English. And that's something that I have been fighting in my head and with people around me. Not true at all. Every country that I'm talking about is a developed country. Denmark, France, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan. I mean, wherever I go, no one speaks a foreign language. No one does it as a part of their core language. When our kid is born here, even 6 months, if I go downstairs, a 6-month-old kid, a 1-year-old could be, the parents would be speaking, do you want to eat? Do you want to eat? I mean, they would not even teach their own language. So we are choosing to convert our children out of Indianness from the time they are born. So I mean, who do we blame? It's a mindset. It's not individuals' fault. It's our mindset that they are superior, we are not. The people who speak and learn in the foreign language are India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh are a few examples where we learn in the foreign language and see where we are. India is doing slightly well these days, but that's not because of English. But look at the countries that speak foreign language are very low in everything. People who speak their own language and learn and communicate in their own language are rated extremely high. And I gave some examples of how our in Indian entrepreneurs, the big ones that we see, they did not study in a foreign medium school. They did not. And in my mind, it's a personal bias. People who study in these English medium schools are good only for middle management jobs. But I am being a little bit more aggressive here. It's not necessarily true, but it is generally true, because the initiative you need to set up something large, you need to be connected to the ground. And these schools are taught that you are almost a subset of a British culture, happen to be born, unfortunately, in this region. Otherwise, they are just somehow surviving here. So they don't attach themselves to the local people, like either they're learning the language or speaking to the auto rickshawala and such. They are completely detached from the world. They are just living here as if they are foreigners. And that's why they are unable to think of solutions that are required for our country. So entrepreneurship requires, understanding the entire business framework, which they don't. Another point is that so many of our people go to foreign countries for higher in the name of higher studies. I should have put quotes, higher studies. I keep wondering, so many, let's say a million people go for higher studies. What do they really study? What do they really study? I mean, undergrad, I mean, the best they could study is like Newton's laws, Maxwell's laws, few basic things that I mean, I can teach. I mean, most people I can walk on the street in Bangalore can teach those things and very well. And I have taught in the US for 4 years. While I was there, I had taught also. And I know the level of education there. Uh, there is nothing that they can teach that is any different from what we can teach here. But everybody wants to go to foreign country. And why do they do that? Because they have been taught the ultimate destination for an Indian or for people here is USA, or if USA is not working out because of Trump, then go to Europe, go to England. If England and then Australia and then New Zealand, the English speaking countries. And if they don't work out, then you go to non-English speaking country, but go to a white country somewhere. And that is the mindset of our people, is that they say that they're going for higher studies, but what do they really study? I mean, Newton's laws, falling apples, I mean, that happens everywhere. Anyway, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, separate discussion, if you like, I can talk about what kind of things that are being taught there and how the quality of education in India is and why our Indian education system is better at the undergrad level. Social sciences, the social science is that so the laws of social sciences, etc., is an outcome of our culture. So whatever is good there may not be good here. So if you study a social science in a foreign country, it is of no use in this country. You have to go and live there and to apply the knowledge that you've learned of social sciences. Social science has no relevance. Of one country social science, you cannot take social science studies of Pakistan and apply in India, or take the one in England and apply to Pakistan or Bangladesh or Nepal. None of that works. The culture has to be consistent for the social science education to be consistent, and that's not true. So the higher study, the concept sells because we think that the West is superior, so everything must be good. You happen to immigrate in the name of higher education, and you are considered successful. Half of them are returning today because there are no jobs there, but that's a different thing. But they are coming back here complaining. They still complain about our country. So the top colleges, in India, I mean, I've seen that many IITs are considered too good for this country because they are already designed for export. So this mindset of foreign influence on our education that prepares us to disconnect with your own culture, disconnect with your dharma and everything, and then you just pushes you towards a foreign thing. It is because of the training that we receive in schools. And the non-Christian schools. So today, most of the schools were so-called mission schools. Their purpose was to convert, and in the name of they had schools, the Saint Stephen, Saint Joseph, all the saints, and many others. But post-independence, many Hindus set up good schools like Delhi Public School, DAV, and many others. What I have discovered is that in the name of good school, these non-Christian schools surpass the Christian schools in Western culture training. They're even stricter because they have to prove that they are as good as the Christian school. So that there is so much focus on so-called discipline, which is completely unnecessary. They have a dress code, which the British moved out of, the American moved out of, but we have a dress code here with a tie. I don't know what do they do with tie. And then I mean, there are so many things. We all know these things, They insist that you only speak do not speak the local language. You always speak English in school. And when you go home, practice English with parents. And I've seen so many parents get emotional. Oh, my son is doing so well. He can even speak English. We don't even understand. And they think their money that they're giving in thousands of rupees per month is of good use because their kids are able to speak a foreign language. So our education is, there should be like a foreign language training, that's like in Germany and France, they get foreign language training. We imbibe that entire culture through the language. We just don't learn a foreign language. So in summary, our education system is basically teaches you that, okay, our education will upgrade you to another culture. you can clean yourself out of like Indianness. So it's just like a dip of a, you just go to a school like is dipping in Ganga. When you come out, you are clean of all the sins which is considered Indian traits. So you are completely cleansed of Indianness, and or now you are clean. You are ready to become a civilized person. So that's exactly how this English culture, English education teaches us. And then if you also look at the English medium kids, their food, the music, the language, the accent, nothing is about India. When they talk about food, they're always talking about these foreign foods. The music, I have not seen any of these kids listen to Lata Mangeshkar or anything that is going on today. They're always tuned to the American music system. The same way they speak English, and there's no more competition on the language because everyone can speak well. Now the competition is on accent. What kind of accent can you make with that? And that's all, they're all living here. They're living in this country, but they're still working on the accent of the foreign world. So, and the last one, I say that, you leave the narrow-mindedness of Indian Sanatan, and then you have a modern outlook of the Christian West. So that is the overall perspective, overall objective, that you leave the Hindu narrow-mindedness and you become modern, which is Christian outlooks. Modern is equal to Christian is equal to Western. And this equal sign is never written anywhere. They say, oh, she's very modern. Why? Oh, she wears a skirt or she wears jeans. How does that relate to modernity? A sari person can be equally modern, but we don't understand the concept behind the term modern. Simply modern means foreign because the foreigners ruled, and if you have become like that, you are considered modern. Otherwise, you are traditional, means in the thousands of years. So to conclude, this whole mindset coaching that goes, just like we talk about how these madrasas train so many of them to be violent. Similarly, our Western education system teaches us to detach ourselves from India and Indian culture, our Sanatana Dharma. And that is the fundamental problem. When I was studying, doing my doctorate in the US and then MBA also, but during my doctorate time, I had so many classmates from foreign countries. I think half of us were, or almost 60% of us were from foreign countries, and 40% were local Americans. So we had largest number was foreigners were Chinese. This I'm talking about late 80s, Korean, Japanese, all of them were my classmates, and I was very close to so many of them. None of them spoke good English. Very few could speak barely any English. And the classroom teaching that we did, I mean, of course, I used the English textbook, which is what the Americans did, but Chinese people have their own books. They had their own books, so they would be listening in English because they were doing some training in English, but they were always using the Chinese Mandarin book. Same thing with Korean, Japanese. They all had their own books, and I'm talking about PhD level books. I'm not talking about ABCD or whatever, the third, fourth grade books. PhD level books were in their own languages, so they would be reading their own for a better understanding. Foreign language education, like I said before, Nigeria, India, how many of our universities are in top 200? None. Look at China, look at Korea, Japan. They are all ruling the academia today. It's no more US or Europe. It is the China, Korea, Japan that is doing most of the research. They are publishing most of the papers. They are actually creating new products and services and creating new ideas. Everything is happening in these countries, and no English, no foreign, nothing. And therefore, what do? In our textbooks, we say, oh, do you think that you can do a PhD in biochemistry in Hindi or in Vajika or Maithili? Then I said, you know what, Maithili is more developed than Korean or Japanese, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to compare, but why should Maithili be any inferior? People who wrote these millions and millions of lines of educated text, why can't they do something more? But the thing is, our mindset is that, oh, how hard it would be to translate. So what I have been thinking is, imagine a 10th grade or a 12th or 12th grade book. They're all in English. On certainly the bachelor's level, there's no Indian language books anyway, or Nepali also. I don't know, actually. I've been there many times, but they haven't really interacted with professors there. I hope to do so very soon. So the textbook, all it takes is one person for 1 year to translate one book of physics for the 4 years of undergrad. I mean, I can do it even in less time. So if you have 1,000 people looking at all the subjects of all the undergraduate classes in 1 year, they can create 1,000 books in our own language, How hard is that? But no, we are converting 1.5 billion people just because we want to save the effort of these 1,000 people. We don't want people to translate from English to Kannada or Gujarati or Maithili, and we want them everybody to be trained in English so they can study those books. Just to study that book, you have to train yourself in English and English medium education, all that. It is very terrible state. The solutions are so trivial. When I go to Bahrain or Saudi or not been to Saudi, but Dubai and all those countries, nobody speaks English. Very, very few. They all speak Arabic. Now some of them have learned Urdu also, which is I understand. But they do very well. The Chinese doing very well. I keep wondering, this whole mindset in India about our own people, that our own language, we dismiss our own things. That is the biggest crime that we do. So I'm going to jump a few slides and we can discuss more. So I'm just jumping. This is my last slide, so we can go through some question answers. What do we do? First of all, you have to detach job from the language expertise. Even a small shop, which claims to be like a large Kirana store, there's the traditional Kirana store, and there's a slightly more so-called sophisticated, slightly bigger. That salesman sitting there would have to speak English. I don't know why. If you are in Darbhanga, then you have just Maithili speaking guys. Why do you need English speaking guys? If you are in Karnataka, then you need Kannada speaking guys. Some exceptions are required, then you deal with it. Nobody, when I go to Germany, they're not preparing themselves. Oh, this guy from Bihar is coming, so we have to train people to speak to him in Bajika. We don't do that, but we keep learning other people's languages. So number one, detach jobs from language expertise. Most of the cases they are not required. Some exception cases are required. We must understand China is the world's biggest economy. Zero English. And in 20, 30 years, they have done it. So this whole drama of foreign everything in our country it's propagated by the people who have been taught into that system, just to protect their own turf. That's why, then nothing else, absolutely nothing else. And this is what I was telling you earlier, that Chandrakantji said, I used to work for Reliance and I worked for the chairman. And I used to be so driven by passion for my own. I always spoke to him in Hindi. And he was always speaking to me in Hindi also. And he, of course, speaks Gujarati with others. But with me, he would always speak in Hindi. And for 3.5 years, I worked for him. Even in big professional, large meeting in conference room, boardrooms, I spoke to him in Hindi, wherever. And I've always felt so proud of that. I don't have to be a slave to a foreign language. And that too, the world's one of the richest men. And he was, he has no reason to speak a foreign language because he can buy people from foreign language. So that's what we see. We have to detach jobs from language expertise and the localization of jobs. Most jobs do not have, the one guy born in a very remote village of Bihar is being trained in English because, how would he interact if he goes to Tamil Nadu, or how would he interact if he goes to Denmark? Tamil Nadu people don't speak English, Denmark people don't speak English, but we are preparing our kids to speak English so that they can. So that is the mindset again, that, anywhere else people would speak English. And the localization of jobs means, the jobs are 99% of jobs are very local. Only 1% requires you to interact with other, interstate. Just go look around in your own neighborhood. How much of your business, the restaurants and the auto rickshaw and the taxi, none of that requires interaction with export and import. But so we can localization of job, focus on that, just hire people who don't speak a foreign language. You don't need that. Study material in our own language, I already talked about it. If you have a study material in our own language, completely detach this whole culture of foreign thing. Respect our own culture and appear confident. I keep telling my sister that, she has a doctorate, but she's uncomfortable speaking fluent English. I tell her, you show an attitude towards those who are throwing a foreign language at you. Why are you being defensive? You don't be defensive. Let them be defensive if they don't know your language. If you are in Delhi, then, Hindi is a normal common language. If they don't speak, then you insult them for not knowing the local language, as opposed to you feeling defensive. So we should also have respect for our own culture, and we must appear very confident rather than be defensive. That I don't know uske saath mein kaisa bolenge, wo to English bolta hai, aisa nahi. We don't have to do that. We have to be very, very confident and aggressive. And we need aggression. We need aggression, so that to the point where, when someone is trying to behave superior by riding on a foreign brand called English or England or UK, we should aggressively dismiss those guys. We should aggressively dismiss those guys. They don't have a foundation of any kind. They live here, but they behave like, well, what kind of world is that? We don't realize it. We accept their aggression. We accept their superiority. Do not accept their superiority. And that's why I see it's aggression. It is not a simple not minding it, but we have to be very aggressive and pro us as anti them. When we want to promote ourselves, our Indian Sanatana Dharma talks about us establishing ourselves, and we have to be anti them also. We have to learn to criticize them. They always criticize us, and we are defending ourselves. We have to criticize them and find faults in them and constantly be aggressive in pinpointing them. Let them be a defensive rather than us being on defensive. I really think that we are always on defensive. We are always defending ourselves. Oh, why do you have to do? Why? How can a stone be? Why? How can you be? I mean, why do we have to defend such things? Look at the crazy things they do, and we never bring up that. So we should do that, and we should recognize that we are bigger and deeper than Europe and America combined many times over. Chinese do not care for Europe and America. They do not. The America CNN may be running campaigns against China, but when Biden and Xi Jinping are meeting, everybody knows who is more powerful. So we have to be that, and I think we are getting there. So the reason that makes me very happy is that we have reached that level of, that the slope has changed now. For hundreds of years, we kept declining. But the thing is that we have survived. 30% of India, and I'm pretty sure 10% of Nepal, and maybe may have converted out. Religion-wise, conversion is also the same conversion as a cultural conversion of English mediums. I put English mediums along with the Christians and the Muslims because they're also against Hindus or Sanatana Dharma. So anti-Sanatana Dharma are English mediums and these two religions and communists and many others. So though, and they are on one side and we are on another side. We have to be fighting this war. We should not consider this as a normal, let's go through. We have to come back very strong, and we are coming back. The fact that we are talking, discussing, engaging with people, and fighting back is a sign that there has been a change in direction, and we are getting more stronger. We are getting more confident, and I think very soon we'll be reestablishing ourselves. One is Sanatana Dharma, and one is I'm more on the fighting and defending turf. My mind goes there because I look at how we are being humiliated, we are being insulted, we are being beaten by people of those kind, like I said, Muslims, Christians, the English mediums, and the leftists all combined. They're all anti Sanatana Dharma. So if I am speaking Sanskrit, or if I in a big party I'm speaking Bhojpuri or Maithili, they would look at me like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Why? What language are you speaking? It's not even yours. At least I'm speaking mine. So aisa confidence leke jana hai market mein. Thank you, everybody. Any questions, discussions?
धन्यवाद. सत्संगमम, थैंक यू वेरी मच. आपको बहुत बहुत ज्यादा धन्यवाद, क्योंकि आपने बहुत अर्थपूर्ण और हमारे जीवन से सटे हुए विषयों को बहुत सरल भाषा में उदाहरण सहित रखा. मैं एक मनोविज्ञान का विद्यार्थी भी हूँ, दर्शन शास्त्र का विद्यार्थी भी हूँ, क्योंकि मनोविज्ञान में हमें ये पढ़ाया जाता है कि जिस लैंग्वेज में, जिस भाषा में हम सीखते हैं, मातृभाषा जो होती है उसमें सबसे ज्यादा अच्छी तरह से समझा जा सकता है।
हाँ हाँ
नेपाली में एक कहावत है कि समझा जा सकता है। तो ये सत्य है कि हमारे ऊपर, भारत हो नेपाल हो, दोनों देशों के ऊपर भाषा के माध्यम से हमारी धर्म और संस्कृति के ऊपर निरंतर आक्रमण होता रहा है। और दुर्भाग्यवश हमारे जो राजनीतिक नेतृत्व करने वाले नेता लोग हैं, और कुछ, सभी को नहीं कहूंगा, कुछ हमारे यूनिवर्सिटी के राजनीति से प्रेरित लोग हैं, उन लोगों ने हमारे जो मस्तिष्क हैं उनको विकृत करने के लिए, दिग्भ्रमित करने के लिए बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया है। और ये सत्य है कि हम उस चीज को भोग रहे हैं, क्योंकि मातृभाषा एकमात्र ऐसी भाषा है जिससे बालक अवस्था से लेकर वृद्धावस्था तक हम अच्छी तरह से किसी चीज को समझ सकते हैं, निर्णय कर सकते हैं। और वर्तमान जो शिक्षा प्रणाली है, वो शिक्षा प्रणाली हमारी जो मातृभाषा है उसको स्थानापन्न करके, वो आपने जैसे बताया कि उनकी संस्कृति को भाषा के माध्यम से हमारे मस्तिष्क पर इनकोड कर दिया जाता है और हम पूरे रूप से दिग्भ्रमित हो जाते हैं। आपने जो, और 100 सालों में इसी इन प्रिंट के कारण, रिप्लेसमेंट के कारण हमारे जो जनरेशन है वो दिग्भ्रमित हो गई है। और सनातन धर्म महासंघ और जरो किलो महाअभियान की चिंता यही है, और हमारा प्रयास ये है कि हमारी जो मौलिक संस्कृति है, ऋषि संस्कृति है, हमारी मुनि संस्कृति है, वैदिक परंपरा है, बौद्ध परंपरा है, जैन परंपरा है, उसको पुनः स्थापित किया जाए और हम लोग इसमें गौरव का अनुभव कर सके। मैं बिल्कुल अमिताभ सत्यम जी से सहमत हूं कि जब मैं यूरोप की यात्रा में था तो मैंने देखा, जर्मन में भी कहीं होर्डिंग बोर्ड में इंग्लिश नहीं देखा मैंने, नेदरलैंड में भी नहीं देखा, डेनमार्क में भी नहीं देखा। पता नहीं, नेपाली में एक कहावत है कि गोरु बेचीको साइनु नभएको भाषालाई हामीले सिक्नुपर्छ। यद्यपि हमारा, समझ रहे होंगे शायद, हमारा इंग्लिश और हमारा जो संबंध है ये व्यापार का संबंध भी नहीं, ये जबरदस्ती लादा गया, इसमें कोई दुराय नहीं। लेकिन हम उसके आदी हो चुके हैं अब, और ये आदी बनाया जा रहा है, और हम समझते हैं कि वो सुपर है, हम इंफीरियर है। बस अब सनातन धर्म महासंघ इंटरनेशनल स्तर पर, जरो किलो महाअभियान, जो हमारे लक्ष्यों से मिलते जुलते विश्व भर के संघ संस्थाएं, उनसे हम सहकार्य करेंगे, ये हमारा लक्ष्य है। और इस ऋषि संस्कृति को, इस वैदिक संस्कृति के गौरव को पुनः स्थापना करने को, पुनः प्राप्त करने के लिए हम प्रयास नहीं करेंगे तो वो क्यों करें, क्योंकि वो तो अपना काम कर चुके हैं। और मैं समझता हूं कि हम लोग नेपाल के माध्यम से, भारत के माध्यम से, आप लोगों के माध्यम से, हम सब मिलकर के इस दायित्व को पूरा कर सकते हैं। और इसी दायित्व के प्रतिफल, इसी दायित्व के बोध के प्रतिफल आज श्री अमिताभ सत्यम जी से हमने ये सत्संग सुना, और मुझे लगता है कि इससे हमें बहुत कुछ मिला है। और जरो किलो महाअभियान का ये अभियान रहा है कि ऋषि संस्कृति, बौद्ध संस्कृति, जैन संस्कृति अपने मूल रूप में, परंतु वर्तमान समय के सापेक्ष के साथ चलते हुए प्रकट हो, और हम एक गौरवान्वित नेपाल के नागरिक बन सकें, गौरवान्वित भारत के नागरिक बन सकें। और सनातन धर्म से तो हम जुड़े हुए ही हैं, जो सनातन धर्म ही ऐसी एक कड़ी है जो हमें एक साथ ला सकती है और हमें अपने गौरव को पुनः स्थापित कर सकते हैं। और आपका जो अभिभाषण रहा वास्तव में बहुत ज्यादा फ्रूटफुल रहा और एम्पावरमेंट देने का रहा। और सनातन धर्म महासंघ के संस्थापक अध्यक्ष जी प्रोफेसर सह प्राध्यापक एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर निर्मलमणि अधिकारी जी वो थ्योरिस्ट भी हैं। उन्होंने इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड पर थ्योरीज और खासकर कम्युनिकेशन सेक्टर में बहुत अच्छा काम किया है। साथ साथ क्योंकि वो ट्रेडिशनली, हम लोग भी ट्रेडिशनली पंडित परिवार से हैं, तो चिंता तो अपने धर्म संस्कृति की लगती है। तो मैंने बाद में ये डिसाइड किया आपका प्रवचन सुनने के बाद में कि मुझे हिंदी में बोलना चाहिए मुझे हिंदी में बोलना चाहिए। तो मैं हिंदी में और नेपाली में, और शुरू में हमने संस्कृत भाषा में भी कुछ बातें यहाँ रखी। तो संस्कृत भाषा हमारी जननी भाषा है। हिंदी, नेपाली और जितने भी भारतीय और नेपाल के और भारतीय भाषाएं वो हमारी अपनी मातृभाषा है और इनका किसी का कोई महत्व कम नहीं है। लेकिन प्रत्येक मातृभाषा में सिखाने का दायित्व, आत्मगौरव करने का दायित्व हमारे ऊपर है। और वो लोग क्यों करें? क्योंकि उनका दायित्व तो अपनी भाषा थोपना है, अपनी संस्कृति थोपना है। मैं बिल्कुल सहमत हूं कि अब हमें डिफेंसिव नहीं, आपकी भाषा में ऑफेंसिव होने की भी जरूरत है। उनके सामने उनका भी क्रिटिसाइज करने के लिए कोई तैयार हो, और हम लोग सब प्रमाण के साथ में इसकी हम तैयारी कर रहे हैं। क्योंकि इसके सेक्टर में जरूर महाअभियान से संबद्ध करीब 14-15 संस्थाएं हैं। इसके माध्यम से हम बहुत सारे सेक्टर में ये काम कर रहे हैं और बहुत खुशी है कि सनातन धर्म महासंघ के साथ में इंटरनेशनल, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय के साथ में आप लोग फाउंडिंग मेंबर के रूप में जुड़े हैं। क्योंकि कल संघे शक्ति कलौ युगे, कलयुग में संघ में बहुत बड़ी शक्ति होती है और यही संघ है जो हमें भारतवर्ष को, नेपाल को, भारत को और भारतवर्ष को वैश्विक स्तर पर गौरवान्वित कर सकता है। तो अब मैं आपको बहुत पावरफुल, उहाँलाई चाहिँ एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण प्रवचन प्रेजेन्टेसन दिनुभएकोमा उहाँहरूलाई हार्दिक धन्यवाद दिँदै अब पार्टिसिपेन्टहरूबाट, सहभागीहरूबाट हामीले 2-3 वटा, धेरै होइन 2-3 वटा, किनभने 10 बजेसम्म सक्नुपर्ने भन्ने कुरा पनि छ, र 2-3 वटा क्वेसन, महत्त्वपूर्ण प्रश्नहरू लिन्छौँ र त्यसपछि चाहिँ अध्यक्षीय भाषणका माध्यमबाट समापन कार्यक्रमको गर्छौँ। सो आई वुड लाइक टू एक्चुअली आपको मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ, इतना ही कहूँगा। अब प्रश्न लेता हूँ मैं। कसैको प्रश्न छ भने सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ। तपाईले रिटन फर्ममा पनि सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ, आफैले सोधेर पनि सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ उहाँलाई। कसैको केही प्रश्न छ भने।
गुरु त्यहाँ चाट बक्समा आएको छ क्वेशनहरु, हजुरले राखिदिनु न।
ए ल, यहाँ छ, म हेर्दैछु। नमस्कार all of you, it is very important, very important. Namaskar. Sir, can you, if you don't mind, you can see the questions on your Facebook Messenger.
No, not on the Messenger. He's trying to tell something.
Yeah, you can get from there.
I will cover the questions from the message box then, because reading all of them will be lengthy and all of them are not actually the questions. There are very few.
एउटा त मैले भेटे यहाँ।
हजुर,
कति छन् यहाँ? निकै छन् क्या क्वेशनहरु?
So Jivan Bhandari ji said, I think if I understand him properly, why not emphasize on Sanskrit language? That is his question. To understand the depth of the Eastern philosophy, it is important to understand it as it is. And to understand it as it is, we need to understand Sanskrit. That is kind of, I am paraphrasing the question he has put there. So that is.
Vednidhi, are you asking me?
Yeah, that is, I am reading the question.
Vednidhi ji, meanwhile, I would like to welcome Professor of Chemistry of Tribhuvan University, Professor Dr. Rameswar Adhikari. Welcome, sir. And Bednidhi, you can go
Thank you,
ahead.
sir. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Namaskar, everybody.
Yeah, Amitabh sir, that is a question or a kind of a topic of discussion. Let's say maybe why not emphasize on Sanskrit? And I think this is the right time for my personal understanding also that we should start more emphasizing Sanskrit language.
तो संस्कृत के बारे में जो मेरा विचार है, earlier Professor Singh mentioned my book that is actually not yet out. It will come soon, and I would love to present some of those ideas another time. The language that we speak at home, Nepali, Maithili, Bajika, is the right language to communicate and learn anything. Not Sanskrit. Sanskrit is an organized version of our local languages. So from Nepali to Kannada to Telugu to Marathi, Gujarati, all of that, if you take, so there's a big discussion about exactly what is the role of Sanskrit and how Sanskrit came about. So we keep that discussion aside for now. Sanskrit as a new language to learn is, I understand if you have to learn something, then you choose English or Sanskrit, and you can learn Sanskrit. It's easier to learn Sanskrit than it is English. But to learn a concept, like when I was studying, my teacher in Sitamarhi would speak Bajika and explain the same concepts that maybe a city teacher in Delhi would speak in English. And I don't think my knowledge was any lesser because I was calling Bal and some Veg and Twaran and Trijya and Vrit, and that reduced the knowledge. It's just different terms. And then so the knowledge is completely independent of language. It is completely independent of language. And when I was talking about जैसे भैंस को चराने जा रहे हैं तो उसमें क्या क्या शब्द प्रयोग करना है, तो वो शब्द है ही नहीं इंग्लिश में. अब उसको कहाँ से लाएंगे? तो लंबा लंबा सेंटेंस बना के डिस्क्राइब कर सकते हैं, but you still won't get the feeling. So the same thing happens same thing if you want to describe that somebody's, I have given this example in the book also, that somebody's standing on a thin ice. Now, for a Bihari, that makes no sense. I don't know, what do you mean by standing on a thin ice? But for Western people who live in a cold culture, they know that the lake or the water body would have frozen, the top and the lower would be water. And if on a thin layer, then you could fall. So somebody who's standing in a risky situation is called standing on thin ice. But for a Bihari, that would make no sense. The same thing about gobar se saaf karna ghar ko, that I have no translation. So the thing is that every culture has to have its own language, and we do. When I speak Bajika, I'm not struggling for words. I'm not at all struggling for words because everything that is required is there. Otherwise, and people are not going to say, oh, I need to do something, but I don't know how to say it. Nobody does it. Every language is complete in its own way. So same way, to teach and to learn, it has to be in your own language. And the reason, and India, it's a bigger politics. I think it's a much bigger politics that Hindi is being imposed in the name of the correct Shuddh Hindi, and what we speak and how we speak Bajika is considered Ashuddh. So that is another political culture. So that's English is playing its own politics. Hindi is playing its own politics, and we are all called part of Hindi belt, but we are actually not. And I looked at some surveys. Not more than 20 people even accept that they can speak Hindi in Bihar. We all speak Angika, Bajika, Maithili, Bhojpuri, and very few like me who can speak both. And even my Hindi is Bihari Hindi, and Punjabi would say, oh, kya bolta rehta hai aisa karke, because they would have their own definition of correct Hindi, because the Hindi doesn't even exist. It's an artificial language. So we'll talk about that in another session. This is the subject of my interest, that how Hindi is being imposed to eliminate local Indian languages. And this is also annihilation of our culture. We don't really realize that when a Bajika is speaking person from Muzaffarpur or Sitamarhi is told that, you know, your language is impure. It is Hindi. The correct one is Hindi. You guys are some local guys in the village. You have, I don't know what kind of language you guys speak. And we become immediately ashamed. Oh my God, my language is not good. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I must learn that language. English does the same thing. Hindi also does the same thing to us. Nobody speaks Hindi as their first language. I challenge people that, you know, go back and think of your grandfather. If your grandfather spoke Hindi, and most grandfathers did not speak Hindi in India. So Vedanidhi, my answer is Sanskrit is ideal to learn, but the communication should be in your local language. And I'm sure we have no more than 30, 40 across 1.5 billion people. That's still you get 60, 70 million people for each major language. It's better ratio than Europe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amitabh ji. Now I have seen the hand from Professor Rameshwar Adhikari ji. Do you have any questions, sir?
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you so much. Namaskar, everybody. Very nice to listen to Amitabh ji about this very, very important topic. So I have one query about one topic that you mentioned about the translation of the books. So where to start? So we cannot translate all the books, and maybe there are some areas, some topics which make sense to start with. From where do you recommend or do you think is good to start translating? So my question. Thank you.
Good. So Rameshwarji, the thing is, social sciences should not be translated. They should be written grounds up. The theories have to be also grounds up. If you're teaching a foreign social science in our country, that is a shame, because, you know, how can you teach? I'll give you one example. When I took a course in psychology in my undergraduate in Kanpur, they taught a concept called fear of success. And I kept thinking that doesn't make sense, does not make any sense. Why would anyone fear success? They said, no, women do, because if they're successful, they won't find a good man to marry them. I looked around and say, most of my classmates were extremely aggressive, and they have come through JEE and very hard. And how can they be like fear of succeeding? They are very competitive. My sister, my neighbors, my cousins, I did not see anybody who was not competitive and did not want to succeed. It took me another decade to realize when I went to the US that they were talking about American culture. In Europe and American culture, women's job is to marry and find a good husband. And if they become overly smart, then the overly smart women are not considered good wives because they may argue something. They want their wives to be extremely subservient. So the thing is, so coming to that example was just to highlight that little things like this in particular was to bother me for a long time. So I remember it. But if you look at the social sciences, includes economics, includes psychology, sociology, and everything else around it, government, politics, it's all very local. So that has to be written grounds up. I mean, we know how our systems work, just write it. Just have some professionals write it from grounds up. See, between the two countries, we are 1.5 billion people. How hard it is. I mean, how hard it is really to write those things. And we already know it. So that's number one. It's very simple, very cheap. And Mukesh Ambani can use 1/10 of his quarterly profit to do this. It is that small. That's number one. And Government of India obviously can. The number two, sciences. Now, sciences is the only thing that you should translate, and because, you know, that's more universal. You can actually take a language, a book in another language. I remember we used to study English as well as Russian books for science in college. So because the Russian books were also good, but they were translated from Russian to English. So they can be translated. And for that, you start physics, chemistry. I mean, I can think about it, how to actually go about executing it. But the idea is, like I have estimated that if I were to be given 1 year, I can I'm more than a year, actually 6 months only, I can translate. Actually, only 1 month, I can translate one undergrad, 1 year, 1 semester, 2 semesters book in 1 month. Because I know both the languages, all I have to do is start writing it, and it doesn't take that much time. It's not original writing. So even if you give 1 year, one subject, one person. You have one book in each language, and we have 1.5 billion people. So many great people. They can write it, and higher and higher and higher. I have seen in Chinese books. So if they have to say CH2COO5 SH, I mean, I'm using alcohol, but the thing is that if you have those formulas will continue to be in Roman. I have seen that in their books also, that everything is in Mandarin, but these formulas are with Roman, with sine, alpha, delta, kappa. That's all of that is there. We can also do that. When I was studying in my school, we did not use sine and cosine. We used to say jia, kojia, kotijia, etc. So we had our own terms for sine, cosine. We can continue with that. We have most of these terms there. And you know, the most ridiculous thing that we do today is the forced translation of an English word into Hindi. I mean, that is another topic altogether. Is we don't know how to translate a word to word, and we just force translate it, becomes meaningless. So we should not do that. I think everything grounds up would be helpful, Rameshwarji.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Rameshwarji, for good question, meaningful question. And now Neeraj Paudel is there. He is the economist from Kathmandu University. Neerajji, you can ask.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaskar, Saudharale. So I have this question regarding, the political willingness. Can we move ahead at the required speed in this agenda of mother tongue, education from school to university? Because I've been doing research in education sector also, and this language issue is one of the significant issue that results into children dropping out of the school quite early, because they are not able to study mathematics, for example, in their mother tongue, and so can we do this at the required speed without political parties making this their political election agenda? Because as of now, most of the political parties, even on the right, they are very busy selling cheap and popular agendas like free electricity, free water, and so on. So they are not talking about translating 1,000 books in a year. That's not even in the top 10 list. So if we do not do this politically, it will be very slow, and it might be too late also. So that is my question. Yeah.
No, but the belief is that whatever Europe is telling us in terms of education is the right way of doing it. And since Europe speaks in Roman script, let us learn Roman script through English. So that is the foundation of this mindset that higher education means English. So it is about mindset. So Neeraj, politics has to come into picture, because they control money, they control the curriculum, they control the schools. So, but the thing is that on what basis politics would change? It's simply by people like us talking and propagating certain ideas and being very assertive wherever there is a need to be. So if there is like in Bharat, what we are observing is first 5 years we are now doing in our local language. That recently happened in the new education policy. So somebody is thinking about those things now, that why are we really imposing a foreign language on all of us? And few things. I mean, in Bharat, I think the big good things are going on. Not to the extent that like we are hoping to, but like I said, there has been an inversion of the trend. It's now picking up, and I think it will gather momentum very, very quickly, because the fact that you invited me to talk about this topic and we are all taking interest in discussing it is a sign itself that we are eager and willing to change. And I know that it was a given 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that only way to do education is English. The only way to be civilized is European. We are challenging all that now. We are challenging all that now already. And I think going forward, it will gain more momentum. And those living in foreign countries, I remember when I taught, It was 88, 89, 1991, 4 years in the US. I used to, in the first day of classes, and some of you probably teach, some of you are professors also. The first day of the class, we simply introduce ourselves, we write our name, and they give out for office address, and what times would you be available to meet with students, like 1 or 2 hours per week, etc. I always wrote my name in Devanagari. It was not about any politics. It was a sense of self-respect that, I'm not going to sell my identity to you just because I'm here. It was, I was barely 22, but this was going on in my head. It didn't feel right that I completely submit myself to them. So I wrote my name in Devanagari, and I see many of you have written your name in Devanagari. So I always wrote my name in Devanagari, and I would ask my students to, hey, practice writing my name. So they would just draw my name. It used to be fun. But the thing, it was about self-respect. So once we start believing in our identity and we start respecting it, see, one of the things, we always naturally consider Muslims and Christians to be superior because they say this is how we do it. This is how we always do it, and we don't change. On Friday at 1 o'clock, we'll do our thing. We say, of course, please go, please go. We don't question it. But whenever it comes to our things, we instantly submit and say, no, not a problem. I'll remove my chandan or tika. We immediately do that. We should not do that. We have to be so assertive in our own beliefs that others yield to us. That yes, we have to respect this person's identity. And especially in the US and other countries, the identity, what is going on, feel free to assert your identity there. People will respect you even more. I can see it wearing a tika, so which is perfect.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Neeraj.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we have the last question. It is the last question. This will be last question, and then we will conclude the session. So Archana ji, तपाईको केही छ क्वेशन सुनिराख्नु भएको छ भने तपाईं कोही प्रश्न राख्न सक्नुहुन्छ।
सबै गुरुमा पहिला नमस्कार र अहिले सन्ध्या कालको सबैलाई चाहिँ सतसत नमन छ।
मैथिलीमा अथवा बज्जीमा बोल्दा पनि हुन्छ।
हैन, तपाईले त मलाई चाहिँ भन्नुभयो कि इंग्लिशमा के रे मैथिलीमा र बजिकामा चाहिँ बोल्नलाई, हैन? त्यही कुरा तपाईहरुसँग पनि म सोध्न सक्छु। नेपाल र भारतकै मान्छे यहाँ छ, विदेशी युरोपियन त मान्छे छैन। आफ्नो धर्म संस्कृतिको कुरा हामी चाहिँ गर्ने अनि झन् इंग्लिशमै चाहिँ किन ल्याङ्ग्वेज गर्ने, व्हाई, किन? हैन, हाम्रो आफ्नै भाषामा। पहिला त अमिताभ सत्यमजीलाई चाहिँ मैले धेरै धेरै नमस्कार कोटि कोटि गर्न चाहन्छु। एकदम बहुत बहुत दिल से प्रणाम कहला चाहिए हम। ये कार्यक्रम तो बड़ सुंदर लगली। हम बड़ से बड़ 15-20 मिनट मात्र हम सुन लिए, मगर तो हम बड़ा शुरू में खटाई गए कि कार्यक्रम इतने सुंदर सबके देखी इंग्लिश से टोन भरी, सबके देखी यहाँ के धर्म संस्कृति के भाषा के सबके अपन अपन बात विचार लवी भन्नाले सबै चाहिँ कुरा गर्ने मातृभाषाको धर्म संस्कृतिको यो इंग्लिशको कहाँबाट आयो शब्द? त्यो छोडेर आफ्नो बरु हामी नबुझे पनि बरु चाहिँ संस्कृतमै किन नबोल्ने? मलाई त लाग्छ कि अब आइन्दा यस्तो चाहिँ इंग्लिश टोन छोडेर यो कार्यक्रम यस्ता खालको कार्यक्रम छोड्यो भने आफ्नो आफ्नो मातृभाषाको चाहिँ बरु युज गर्ने। किन हामी उतातिर गइराखेको छ? यो चाहिँ म निर्मल सरसँग पनि म यसको चाहिँ प्रश्नको उत्तर लिन चाहन्छु र अमिताभ सरसँग पनि लिन चाहन्छु। मलाई यो म चाहिँ युरोपमा बसेको हैन नि, म त्यहाँको मान्छे हैन नि, बरु आफ्नो भाषालाई आफ्नो धर्म संस्कृतिको चाहिँ जुन छ त्यहीबाट हामीले गल्ती गरिराखेको हुन्छ। मलाई यस्तो म 2-3 वटा कार्यक्रममा पनि यो कुरा मैले भनिसक्छु। मलाई यो चाहिँ पटक्कै मन पर्दैन। इंग्लिश आफ्नो आफ्नो ठाउँमा छ, जहाँ छ त्यहाँ बोल्ने हो। तर हामीले नै बिर्सिराखेको छौं भने हामी आफ्नो बच्चाहरूलाई के सिकाउने? यसको चाहिँ उत्तर पाऊँ। अमिताभ सर, हम वहाँ के एकटा मैथिली छे। दोसर बात कहला रहली कि मैथिली बजिका भोजपुरी ई सबै त बाजिका कहै छै कि से हम छी मैथिली के रे बाजिका छी। ओना त अपना सबके महत्री सरलाई के रे ई यहाँ के सीतामढ़ी मुजफ्फरपुर एमे के 2-3 टा किताब अध्ययन कैली। हकीकत मतलब सच बात की से मैथिली कहै छै 3-3 कोश में परिवर्तन भेलै। मैथिलीए के ओकरा बाजिका कहल जाय छै। तो सत्य बात की ये हमर प्रश्न भेल, मगर एकटा अनुरोध है कि हम ई बात कहली कि मैथिली करे मातृभाषा अपन चाहे अपन राष्ट्रीय भाषा बजनाइ ठीक कि नहीं ठीक, एहन कार्यक्रम अहू के उत्तर हमरा चाहिए। ये
नहीं ठीक है वो हम मैथिली हम ठीक से नहीं बजे छी, बाजिका बोलिए तो हम बोल देंगे।
नहीं हम
बाजिका
हम उहे कहला छी कि बाजिका अहाँ के कितना वर्ष भेले बाजिका कहै छी, हम सर्वश्रेष्ठ छी, मैथिली कहै छी हम सर्वश्रेष्ठ छी, अपन अपन भाषा विज्ञ वाला आदमी सबके
बदल जा रही। हाँ लेकिन ये जो है ना मैथिली से आगे जाएंगे तो अंगिका निकला, उसके आगे गए तो फिर बांग्ला निकला, आसामी निकला, ओडिया, सबका माँ मैथिली है। ये हम बहुत लोग को बोलते हैं, वो लोग बंगाली लोग को अच्छा भी नहीं लगता है। तो भाषा तो हमको जो मतलब अभी क्या है कि हमको मैथिली ठीक से नहीं बोल सकते हैं, हम बजिका बोल सके छी, मैथिली नहीं आवे छी ठीक से हमरा बोले। तो ऐसे हम हिंदी बोले लिया, अंग्रेजी बोले लिया, की बोलिए जे कहल जेते से करबे हम।
ओके
लाइए के आदमी छी हम, बजिके हम बजी छी, कहू
बजिके बोलबै त बजिके से हम बोल सके छी हम बोलबै।
नहीं हमरा इंग्लिश से हमरा से हमर उत्तर के अथी क्वेश्चन के प्रश्न के उत्तर अहाँ हमरा मैथिली में दिउ या नेपाली भाषा में दिउ या तो हिंदी में दिउ, अपन जे अपना सबके धर्म भाषा संस्कृति वही में दिउ, हम इंग्लिश के एकदम अखुनती हट कर ली एहन एहन कार्यक्रम और में चीज में तो हमहू आके बोल सके छी, से अपन वो छुट्टे है। हम अहाँ कला लोप करबी, कला ओकरा आगाड़ी बढ़ाबी, आ बात करबे कि धर्म संस्कृति बचाओ तो एना ना बचते, हमरा अहाँ के बच्चा की सीखते।
सबसे बढ़िया बात यही हुआ, सबसे बढ़िया बात यही हुआ, हम लोग को भी बदलना पड़ेगा इसे।
300 वर्षदेखिको जुन दासत्व र यो आइडियोलोजिकल ट्र्यापबाट निस्किन आजको भोलि सम्भव छैन नि त अर्चनाजी। हामी पहिलो कोसिसमा छौँ, वी आर इन द इन्फ्लेक्सन पोइन्ट।
हैन त्यो हाम्रो मनको मात्रै हो, मनको बदमासी मात्रै हो। तपाईँ के युएस मा बस्यो भने के हामीले चाहिँ नेपाली भाषा तपाईँ बोल्न सक्नुहुन्न, त्यहाँबाट तपाईँ इंग्लिश भनेर भन्ने हो, अनि कार्यक्रम चलाउने चाहिँ सनातन धर्मको जरो किलोको, अनि बोल्ने इंग्लिश। नेपालीमा कुरा गरौँ, हिन्दीमा कुरा गरौँ, कोसिस हैन गर्नुपर्छ। हाम्रो निर्मल सरले पनि सुनिराख्नु भएको छ, उहाँले पनि हिन्दी र नेपालीमै दिनुहुन्छ उत्तर।
अब यसो गरौँ न, यसो
गरौँ पनि म त्यही दिए।
अर्चना जी,
गोविंद जी अगला कार्यक्रम बजिका में करेंगे, मैथिली को भी समझ में आ जाएगा।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। मुझे लगता है कि अर्चना जी ने जो प्रश्न किया है बहुत सांदर्भिक प्रश्न है और छूता है। अब जो कार्यक्रम है, कार्यक्रम का एक प्रारूप है, उसको लेके चलना ही पड़ेगा, लेकिन उनका जो क्वेरी है, उनका जो प्रश्न है, उनका जो उसको हम बहुत ज्यादा सम्मान करते हैं, और भविष्य में हम चाहेंगे कि हम स्थानीय भाषाओं में भी इस तरह का हमारा सत्संग चले। इतना मैं कह सकता हूं।
एकदम सबै गुरुलाई म यही कुरा भन्छु, इंग्लिशलाई चाहिँ अब चाहिँ छेउ लगाउँदा हुन्छ, किन हामी सबैजना आफ्नो आफ्नो भाषा बुझिरहेको छ, किन इंग्लिश ल्याउने बीचमा।
हुन्छ 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 अर्चना जी, हामीले अरूलाई पनि आफ्नो कुरा बुझाउनु पर्छ, त्यसकारणले अंग्रेजी पनि चाहिन्छ, यसरी पनि बुझौँ हामीले।
हाम्रो कुरा उसले बुझाउ, हाम्रो कुरा उसले बरु बुझोस्, हामी उसलाई किन चाहिँ बुझाउने हो, उसलाई चाहिँ हाम्रो नेपाली भाषा सिकाउन किन हामी लोप गर्ने।
यो सवाल जवाफ दोहोरो धेरै भयो, धेरै नगरौँ न।
अब त्यसरी नजाऊ। अब हामी सम्भवतः हामीले अमिताभजीले र हामीहरूले तपाईको प्रश्नलाई चाहिँ एकदम महत्त्वका साथ लिएका छौँ र तपाईको सुझावलाई मान्दछौँ, र अब चाहिँ हामी कार्यक्रमको लगभग अन्त्यमा पनि आइसकेका छौँ र 10 बज्न थालिसक्यो भन्दा पनि हुन्छ, र 10 बज्न थालिसक्यो, र अब हमारा ये प्रयत्न रहेगा, जैसे अर्चना जी ने प्रश्न किया है उनको भी हम स्थान देंगे, और प्रत्येक मेरा ये प्रस्ताव है कि हम लोग जितने भी फाउंडिंग मेंबर हैं, जितने भी फाउंडिंग अध्यक्ष उपाध्यक्ष हैं और भी मेंबर्स हैं सनातन धर्म इंटरनेशनल के फेडरेशन के, तो हम पर प्रत्येक 15 दिन में अपने ही फाउंडिंग मेंबर से हम प्रवचन सुनेंगे, उनके विचारों को सुनेंगे। ऐसा मेरा प्रस्ताव है। यदि आपको ठीक लगता है तो हम नेक्स्ट 15 दिन के बाद में फिर किसी हमारे विद्वान फेडरेशन के मित्रों से हम सुनेंगे, ये हमारा प्रस्ताव है। तो अब क्योंकि बहुत देर हो चुका है, हम लोगों ने, क्योंकि सत्संग है, सत्संग तो चलता ही रहेगा और जितना भी सुनने की इच्छा होता भी है, लेकिन टाइम तो रुकता नहीं, समय नहीं रुकता। इसका भी हमें सम्मान करना पड़ेगा। कितने को तो नींद आ चुकी होगी, कितने तो नींद सोना चाहते हैं, और कितनों ने भोजन नहीं किया होगा। ये सोच रहे होंगे कि नहीं, यहाँ से जल्दी छोड़ देंगे तो भोजन करने को मिलेगा, तो हम बहुत ज्यादा अवरोध नहीं करेंगे। तो मेरा प्रस्ताव ये है कि प्रत्येक 15 दिन में जो सनातन फेडरेशन है वो कार्यक्रम करने का मैं प्रस्ताव करता हूँ। नेक्स्ट हम बैठ करके फिर संजाल के माध्यम से कौन वक्ता होगा ये भी हम डिसीजन कर लेंगे। तो नेक्स्ट 15 दिन के बाद में फिर हम मिल सकते हैं। अब मैं इस कार्यक्रम को चेयर कर रहे प्रोफेसर निर्मल मणि अधिकारी जी से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि इस कार्यक्रम के विशेष पक्षों को प्रकाशित करते हुए, फेडरेशन के कुछ लक्ष्यों को स्पष्ट करते हुए इस कार्यक्रम का समापन करें। और मैं डॉक्टर गोविंद शरण उपाध्याय, जो गलतियां हुई हैं उसको मुझे वापिस दे दीजिए, जो अच्छा ही है वो आप ले लीजिए लेके जाइए और अच्छी तरह से रखिए और जीवन में उतारिए। तो मैं सत्यम जी को, साथ साथ जितने भी हमारे अग्रज हैं और जो पार्टिसिपेंट हैं देश विदेश के, आप सब लोगों को सबैलाई चाहिँ हार्दिक सम्मान व्यक्त गर्दै म चाहिँ अहिले यहाँहरुबाट ओझेल हुन चाहन्छु। स्टिल नेक्स्ट सत्संग। थैंक यू वेरी मच। सी यू अगेन ऑन नेक्स्ट सत्संग।
नमस्कार। आज हामीले सनातन धर्म महासंघ नेपालबाट सुरु भएर जुन सनातन धर्म अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय महासंघ इन्टरनेशनल फेडरेसन अफ सनातन धर्म स्थापना भइसके पछाडि त्यसको संकल्प समारोह पछिको यो पहिलो सत्संग रह्यो। आज सुरुमा यहाँ अर्चनाजीले उठाएको कुराबाट म प्रवेश गर्छु। त्यसमा यो बहुभाषिक नै हुन्छ। हामीले यसमा कसैले जिद्दी गर्ने कुरा होइन, बहुभाषिक नै हुन्छ। यसमा इन्टरनेशनल फेडरेसन अफ सनातन धर्ममा हामीले नेपाल भारतको मानिसहरू मात्रै होइन कि अमेरिकी, अफ्रिकी, चिनिया जो कोही पनि राख्ने भनेका छौँ। त्यसो भएको हुनाले कोही फ्रेन्च बोल्यो भने पनि त्यसमा हामी यसरी यो जुन प्रोटेस्ट जस्तो चाहिँ नगरौँ। कसैले के बोल्ला कसैले के बोल्ला। आजको म आफैले अनुरोध गरेको थिएँ अमिताभ सत्यमजीलाई यो अङ्ग्रेजीमै रहोस् भनेर। यसको विशेष कारण छ, बीचबीचमा हिन्दी आउँछ, आवश्यक पर्दा नेपाली पनि हामी बोल्छौँ, मैथिली बज्जिका सबै बोल्यौँ। यो के हो भने ज्ञानलाई सार्वजनिक क्षेत्रमा लाँदाखेरिमा अन्यत्रको ज्ञान हामीले जान्नलाई नेपालीमा, मैथिलीमा, हिन्दीमा ल्याउनु जरुरी छ। हाम्रा धेरै मान्छेको त्यसमा पहुँच नभएको कुरालाई भने हाम्रा कुराहरूलाई हामी यी कैयौँ कुराहरू हामीले त दैनन्दिन जीवनमा जानिरहेकै कुरा पनि छन्। यी कुरा यो त सञ्जालमा रहने कुरा हो, युट्युबमा पनि रहन्छ, अन्य प्रयोजनमा पनि प्रयोग गरिन्छ। यो अङ्ग्रेजी भाषामा रहँदाखेरि यसको प्रयोगको जुन दायरा हो त्यो व्यापक हुन्छ। त्यो हिसाबले आजको विषयवस्तुलाई ख्याल गरेर पनि त्यो भनिएको हो। त्यसो भएको हुनाले माध्यम हामी सबै प्रयोग गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ, अङ्ग्रेजी पनि प्रयोग गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। हामी त त्यो के हो भने साधनलाई कसरी प्रयोग गरियो भन्ने कुरा हो। अङ्ग्रेजी भाषामा बोले तापनि त्यहाँभित्रको जुन अन्तर्य हो, त्यसको सन्देश हो, त्यो चाहिँ सनातन धर्मको हामी बोलिरहेका छौँ। तो आज हमने जो कार्यक्रम आयोजन किया, ये हमारा संकल्प समारोह के बाद पहला कार्यक्रम था और ये मेरा ही अनुरोध था कि पहले वक्ता हम अमिताभ सत्यम जी को बनाएं। तो उनका जो आपका जो प्रस्तुति हुआ ये बहुत ही अच्छा रहा। इसके लिए मैं आपको बहुत बधाई और साधुवाद अर्पण करता हूँ। आप स्वयं इंटरनेशनल फेडरेशन ऑफ सनातन धर्म इसके फाउंडिंग मेंबर हैं, संस्थापक सदस्य हैं, तो परिवार के ही हैं। आज कुशलतापूर्वक कार्यक्रम संयोजन किया डॉक्टर गोविंद शरण उपाध्याय, जो महासचिव हैं इनके, जनरल सेक्रेटरी, और अपने स्वागत भाषण में, स्वागत वक्तव्य में प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर चंद्रकांत प्रसाद सिंह ने न सिर्फ स्वागत किया, एक विचारोत्तेजक प्रारंभ उन्होंने दे दिया। इसके लिए हमारे इंटरनेशनल वाइस प्रेसिडेंट हैं, उनको भी मैं साधुवाद अर्पण करता हूँ। डॉक्टर अमिताभ सत्यम ने बहुत अच्छा ये प्रारंभ किया। बाद में आने वाले वक्ताओं के लिए एक मानक रहेगा कि कम से कम इतना अच्छा तो करें। तो ये बहुत ही अच्छा प्रारंभ हुआ और many participants, they expressed through text or through their voices, they participated in this process. Today I'm not making my speech long. I would like to just make one announcement. From this year on, International Federation of Sanatana Dharma also will be a partner in organizing World Sanskrit Day. In earlier years, we were together, the overall Jaro Kilo movement, yeah, Sanatan Dharma Mahasangh Nepal, Jaro Kilo Pratishthan, Sarideta International, and other organizations, including Nepal Sanskrit University and Jayatu Sanskritam, they collaborated. Yeah? Nepali Hindu Forum UK, such organizations, and another organization from Australia, like that. Now, International Federation of Sanatan Dharma also will be jointly organizing World Sanskrit Day. Only this much I would like to announce today. We have many days ahead. Sanatan Dharma is reviving. We will work for our Dharma. धर्म को रक्षा करेंगे तो धर्म हमारा रक्षा करेगा. So we have been reading this, we have been listening this. हामीलाई थाहा भएकै कुरा हो, धर्मो रक्षति रक्षित, र धर्म नै हाम्रो मूल आधार हो. अरु हाम्रो सभ्यताको, हाम्रो संस्कृतिको सबै धर्म हो. धर्मको सूत्रबाट हामी जोडिएका छौं. हामीले प्रारम्भ गरेको केही वर्षको यात्रा अब वैश्विक तहमा साँच्चै नै आएको छ. सरिदेवता अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय मार्फतबाट पनि हामीले केही प्रयास गरेकै हौं, त्यो कार्य छँदैछ. थ्रु International Federation of Sanatana Dharma, people from all races, from all nationalities across the world, whoever is follower of Sanatana Dharma can be a member of this. We are getting connected throughout the world, and we will continue our journey with our Dharma. With this, I conclude today's program. Om